Hi, and welcome to another episode of I'm on a CIA watch list with Cameron Langley. Today we'll be discussing the Biden administration, new administration, same establishment, what changes we could get from them, what the possibility of actually pushing progressive policy that helps all Americans. I want to remind viewers that in our last episode, we discussed the ongoing push on progressives in Congress like AOC to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi as Speaker until they get the concession of her holding a Medicare for All vote in the House. It's forcing the vote. It's forcing progressives to use their leverage to do what we elected them to do in the first place. So, I want to ask my viewers to like, subscribe, give me feedback, and share. Hit the bell notification so that you get all the new videos and you're notified about them. I don't post videos that much, but I've been thinking about just doing shorter videos based on one article or one topic at a time. So let me know if you'd prefer that too. Share on all your social media if you've got a progressive or a lefty friend or just somebody that you think needs to hear one of these videos. Send them to them. Share them on your Facebook, on your Twitter. You can link it on your Instagram. I don't care. Share it on any platform. What's going to be discussed in this episode is the Biden administration. Oh, and I want to remind you, if you want to see what's going on with that push for M4A and pushing the progressives, you can go to my Twitter page. You can kind of keep track on how we've been dealing with AOC and her gaslighting attempts at progressives and whatnot. And that fight's not over. I'll probably end up doing another video about that fight soon. Do a video of our chances with progressives as well. Progressives in the Democratic Party, that is. So, new administration, same establishment. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start out with the new president. So, Biden. Everybody says, before we got elected, it was a vote blue no matter who push. We had to get Biden in there because Trump was bad. Trump's a fascist. Trump is, we just have to get him out of the White House. If we get him out of the White House, we'll be on a much higher, a much better playing field. We'll be able to push him left, push Biden left, and get the things that we're supposed to get, like Medicare for All. Well, I'm about to show you why that push Biden left mentality is false, isn't going to get us anywhere. So, let's talk about what Biden could do. Now, as president, you're commander-in-chief. You can't do much. You're a figurehead. Hold on. Sorry about that. My dog was biting on herself. It's going to be a struggle in these episodes because my dog doesn't know how to stay quiet when I'm recording. Anyway, so as president, you're commander-in-chief. You're only you're a figurehead of the government, but you do have some power when it comes to executive orders. That's one of the things that progressive civil rights leaders, whatnot, have been pushing Biden on is, here's what you could do through executive order, what you could do directly as president. Republicans have no problem about this. Trump did as many executive orders as he wanted to. They praised him, and whether or not it was good or bad, he got shit done. So don't be afraid to use executive orders and make excuses. This, they go low, we go high is really we go high, they go low, because it doesn't matter to them. They're not going to play on your moral high ground. It doesn't matter to them. But anyway, let's get started and let's actually talk about the substance of this. So the first thing is, there was a Forbes article that was talking about Biden's 5 executive orders that he plans. This is from November. So basically, he'd rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, which doesn't do enough, and it's just an agreement between nations of we'll do something. Which, for what it's worth, okay. And he also wants to rejoin the World Health Organization. I have no problem with that necessarily. Repealed Trump's Muslim travel ban and transgender military ban. Perfectly fine. That, Trump's a fascist. That's repealing fascist policies in my mind. And reinstating the Dreamers program that the Trump administration repealed. Perfectly fine. I love it. But these are only 5 executive orders, and it's some pretty simple stuff. It's mostly just reversing what Trump did with some of his executive orders, which seems like all that the Dems want to do is just reverse what Trump did, not actually do anything that would help to aid the conditions that got us Trump in the first place, or help American people to begin with. Like, they need to do more than just oppose Trump. The Trump era is about to be over. They need to actually help the American people. But then this is more recent. This is from the 12th, so a couple days ago. Biden may also use executive orders for guns, healthcare, and education. This was from lifezet.com. Now, I read the article, and it didn't really specify what. Just, I could imagine with how Biden is, what policies he supports, it would be some sort of gun control legislation. For healthcare, it would probably be something with the ACA. And then with education, I'm not sure, but Dems like Chuck Schumer have been pushing for student debt relief, which is puny because they don't actually help to relieve all student debt. It's just a certain percentage of it that they dangle in front of progressives' head, like, hey, we do progressive policy, but they don't. So there you go, right there. That's what Biden's thinking of for executive orders. So what about police reform? What about M4A? What about a Green New Deal? What about, our infrastructure? What about ending our wars? This stuff. So I linked the Washington Examiner. Now the article actually sources its thing from The Intercept, in which Ryan Grimm actually had a podcast where he aired some leaked audio from a phone call between Biden and civil rights leaders, and they had talked about executive orders. And I want to read you what came from that. In the call, Biden said, they were asking him to basically use his executive orders to do some civil rights stuff, to do some police reform. And mind you, these are some civil rights leaders like Al Sharpton that they're pretty establishment too. They're not down on the streets like in the BLM rallies and stuff. They're not defund the police. They're not that far. I don't know that I'd necessarily say left, but they're not. It's not the same thing as what you hear directly from the black communities. But even then, they were asking him to use some executive orders to put through what they wanted. And he said, I'm not going to violate the Constitution. Biden said that. Executive authority that my progressive friends talk about is way beyond bounds. Biden assured those on the call that he would use his powers as president to undo every single damn thing this guy, meaning Trump, has done by executive authority. But he added, I am not going to exercise executive authority where it is a question, where I can come along and say, I can do away with assault weapons. There's no executive authority to do away with that. And no one has fought harder to get rid of assault weapons than me. But you can't do it by executive order. We do that. Next guy comes along and says, well, guess what? By executive order, I guess everybody can have machine guns. So we got to be careful. So basically what he's saying there is, if he did executive order for something, a Republican could come later and reverse it and do something even worse. here's the thing. The Republicans are going to do that anyway. You can put your little centrist executive orders in there, not do anything, and only do a couple things in your administration, and they're still going to reverse it and go all the way further to the right when they come in. It doesn't matter whether or not you do the progressive executive orders that have been requested of you. If you did them, though, the American people could actually get some wins that might end up helping you in an electoral victory later. But let's get past that. He also said in March that he would veto an M4A bill, even a compromised version, because of the price tag, which signals he surely wouldn't use an executive order for it. I linked that from CNBC. That was from March, where he says Biden would veto Medicare for all as coronavirus focuses attention on health. Sorry for like burping under my breath there. I know that's gross. Anyway, this, and then the last one on this is from commondreams.org, where it talks about how Biden would handle the climate crisis. And he doesn't support a Green New Deal anyway, but he still likely wouldn't use executive order for it. If he did, most of his actions regarding climate would be to reverse Trump's policies. That's not enough, especially considering that when you think about a Biden administration now being 4 to 8 years, that's the better part of a decade. Either way, we have only a decade to reverse some of the disastrous things about our climate policy, or our policies in general, to try and create climate policy that stops us from warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. So we have a decade to basically fix climate, not fix climate, but to solve this issue. And that doesn't mean we have until 2030 and then we act then. No, we have until 2030 to act. That means we have to act in the meantime. Best to start sooner rather than later. So let's talk about the cabinet. I call it a catch-all drawer with bad and decent. So I linked it from CNN. They have a nice little thing. I hate CNN, they're mainstream media, but they do have this thing on their website that shows who's been picked for his cabinet so far in the Biden administration. And we're going to go over those real quick. First one that most everybody knows is Kamala as vice president. She was the Attorney General of California before. She's been a prosecutor, and she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations. She blocked evidence that would have freed a man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California, and she fought to keep cash bail system in place. That's why you see so many memes about her being a cop, about her being, there's a picture of her and then Ruby Bridges' shadow walking in the same way, and I've seen that brilliantly turned into one where you see Ruby Bridges in a cage and cop Kamala standing there next to her, because it's not the same. Don't try and use that imagery to say that she's some big civil rights leader. She has been just as bad for black people in California as cops and the justice system has been for them for a long time. So she's no good person when it comes to that. And now she's vice president. So that's where she's bad. And I linked something from the Federalist where they talked about where Tulsi Gabbard ripped her on all this. Now, I don't support Tulsi Gabbard anymore, but I feel like that's beside the point right now. Tulsi's a transphobe, whatnot. Again, beside the point. Now let's talk about General Lloyd Austin as Secretary of Defense. He's currently a member of the board of directors at Raytheon. Raytheon's a military contractor. They are the ones that have helped to supply equipment to the United States and Saudi Arabia for their war in Yemen. So Raytheon is almost literally helping that genocide there against the Yemeni people. This is a war in which they've been using airstrikes against school buses with Yemeni children in them, using airstrikes against hospitals. And I want to remind you that the intervention in Yemen started in 2015 under Obama, when Biden was what? Vice president. So there's that. Also, this was according to the New York Times. Both Austin and Anthony Blinken, Biden's nominee for Secretary of State, have ties to Pine Island Capital Partners, a large investment firm that has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for acquisitions and defense companies this year. But I linked the thing about him being on the board of directors at Raytheon from The Intercept. And then Neera Tanden as Office of Management and Budget Director. This one really pisses me off because she famously wrote in an email to Faz Shakir, who ended up working on the Bernie campaign later, but that's beside the point, that we have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil, talking about Libya. Most of Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. If we want to continue to engage in the world, just as like having oil-rich countries partially pay us back doesn't seem crazy to me. She's also the president of a pro-Clinton Center for American Progress think tank. And then now the link to that is from the Gray Zone. So basically, Neera Tanden supports war. Not only does she support war, but when we invade oil-rich countries like Iraq or Libya or Syria, she thinks that we should just go ahead and use that money from the oil to pay our deficit here in the United States. So not only are we an empire, but now we use our own internal. We use countries that we've invaded to solve our own internal problems. So that's who Neera Tanden is. She's also a big enemy of leftists and progressives. We don't like her. She's centrist. She's not just centrist. I don't even want to say that. I don't want to keep calling Democrats centrist. She's Republican. She's conservative. That's where they're at. They are not centrist. They are right of center. They just call themselves centrist. And not that I support centrists either. I'm just going to be real about where they're actually at on the political spectrum. And then the next person that I want to bring up is Pete Buttigieg, as Secretary of Transportation. This just came out the other day. He's the mayor of a small Midwestern city, South Bend, Indiana, ran for president this election cycle, got head-to-head with Bernie by the time of Iowa, dropped out before Super Tuesday, or maybe it was Super Tuesday too, I can't remember. And endorsed Biden after a phone call from Barack Obama. Pushed Medicare for all who want it, allowing insurance companies to remain. Had ties to disastrous shadow app that was used in the Iowa primary. Also once called for U.S. intervention in Mexico because of the drug war right after a large lithium deposit was discovered there. And I linked the Washington Examiner for the shadow app debacle, and the Sacramento Bee for his alluding to military intervention in Mexico. I'll bring up real quick that in episode 2 I brought up that Biden's climate liaison, Cedric Richmond, I believe it was, is a fossil fuel industry ally. I'll link the source for that in there so you can go look that back up again. It was from Jacobin Mag. And then I'll go to bring up, to balance it out a little bit, one good pick that we've heard about for the Biden administration. And that just came out yesterday. It was Deb Haaland for Interior Secretary. She would be the first Indigenous American to be Interior Secretary, which does mean something. The Interior, which handles a lot of Native American issues, has never had a Native American as Interior Secretary, and so this is important. I think I remember Deb Haaland being one of the progressive people that got in. Of course, she could She could be centrist. We'll have to see. But it is important that a Native American is finally Interior Secretary. And then, uh, so, there are other different picks from Biden's cabinet so far. I don't know, you know, everything about these people. Um, but it seems so far that it's been mostly centrist, um, establishment type picks, conservative picks even. Uh, they're a little bit diverse, and I don't want to seem like the kind of leftist white dude that denounces identity politics in full and denounces it like into the future. But when it comes to the Democrat establishment and identity politics, it gets annoying to me because it's like, oh, hey, our new CIA director, Gina Haspel, is a woman. Oh, we got a woman in the CIA. Isn't that so great? It's like she still supports torture. Fuck her. I don't care. Um, when you have something like Secretary of Defense General Lloyd Austin, he's a black man and he's Secretary of Defense. Don't care. He is one of the reasons why so many Yemeni children have been being killed or being killed over in Yemen. You cannot look at me and go that this person being elevated to this position is, the positivity of that overrides the negativity of the war that he supported before. Like this person has helped in the killing of Yemeni people. I don't support them. I don't care that they're black. It's not that I don't care about them as a black person. It's that when you put these people who are diverse in front of me and then act as if it's some progressive act, it's like, no, it's not. I don't care if you're black if you support torture. I don't care if you're a woman if you support war. I want, there are plenty of black people out there that aren't like that he could have picked. And uh, just goes to show you that the Democratic establishment will play around with your emotions, play around with identity politics, just to rope you into thinking that they're actually doing something for you. Nonetheless, if we got more leftist politics, if we had, people that got in that was the first black such and so, but was also progressive and was going to give us Medicare for all, I'd be ecstatic. Even if they weren't as progressive as I wanted them to be, I'd still be very happy. I was very happy and still am that the squad got in. But even with the progressive squad, if they're not going to do the right things, then it starts to not mean so much after a long time, if that makes any sense. But that's the Biden cabinet so far. So basically, here's my take on what the Dem Party should mean to us going into 2021. And I wrote this down, so I'm just going to read from this real quick. So Biden, the president, will not use his executive order leverage because of the old they go low, we go high mentality. No sign that Biden could be pushed left, but that would be a wasted effort alone. When I say alone, I mean if you're going to push for progressive stuff right now or leftist stuff or, a black agenda, then you need to push the entire establishment at once. Something that none of them can avoid. So the Biden administration, meaning, further out from just Biden himself, seems to be just as establishment as Biden. Would not expect much transformational change from them. Honestly, feels like the Obama administration 2.0 or even better, the Clinton administration 3.0. The Democrats in Congress are a mix of progressives and centrists. Nancy Pelosi rejects the left completely, and progressives like AOC are hesitant to use their leverage for needed things like Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. Dems also only have the House, not the Senate, And we'll call the Republicans obstructionists and never push anything through anyway. So they're not even going to try, because they'll say, well, if we got it passed through the House like Medicare for All, it's going to fail in the Senate. So why even try? Well, you try because by the chance that it does get through, people get Medicare for All. And if it doesn't get through, the people that need Medicare for All see that at least somebody in the government was fighting for them. But so how do we fight for change in the next coming years? Well, here's what I would say. And I'm not, the left isn't a monolith. Progressives aren't a monolith. The different communities that I'm not a part of, like the Black community isn't a monolith. The Latino community isn't a monolith. The female community isn't a monolith. Even a community that I'm part of, like the LGBTQ plus community, isn't a monolith. So obviously we're not going to have all the same tactics, pushes, policies, whatever. But I do feel like there's enough that we relate on and come together on, and there's enough intersectionality that we're starting to realize what does need to be pushed. And I think most Americans would agree something like healthcare is necessary. So how do we fight for change? Don't continue to be part of the Dem Party. We don't kiss their ass, but we still pressure them for the right things. We elevate a third party like the People's Party or the Green Party, which, some people might say that's a joke. We're running out of time. So a joke is thinking that the Dem Party is going to save us before 2040. And then organizing general strikes for things like with things like M4A, Green New Deal, a Black Agenda, and UBI as demands. Just like India did. You can go watch episode 3. Episode 3 was all about the general strike going on in India right now and the 250 million people that got out in the street. And it's not just like it's one political party behind it. There's a lot of people coming together for this. It's working class solidarity. That is important. Please remember working class solidarity right now. And then create mutual aid and support networks in the meantime in your communities. If things get shut off, if there's an economic collapse, any of the horrible things that could happen right now, especially while we're still going through COVID, and that could get worse or get better, we don't know yet. Please, know your neighbors. Be able to help provide for them. Be able to grow your own crops and talk to your neighbors and make sure that if you're cut off, that you can still support yourself. You're not going to be able to support yourself on your own. It doesn't matter, if you have the biggest farm in the world. There are going to be some climate problems. There are going to be some, economic problems that you're going to have to rely on other people. I think working class solidarity also means, in the meantime, in your communities, know your coworkers, know your unions, know the people that are around you so that you can have them help when shit hits the fan. So that's the end of today's episode. I'll remind you to like, share, subscribe, give me feedback. I apologize for any problems in quality. I'll be getting a camera soon and possibly a microphone. I'm going to try to figure out how to edit videos soon enough so I can put overlays in, do some interviews possibly. And then I want to ask for suggestions for topics for future episodes. Also want to ask if shortened episodes on a topic at a time would be better. So those are questions to you as the viewer. And then, so without further ado, thank you again for tuning in. Please keep it up. This has been today's episode of I'm on a CIA watch list with Cameron Langley, and we'll see you next episode.